My name is Jacob Davis, and I'm just a 16-year-old high school student from Sacramento, California. But what I'm about to share with you is something that I still can't fully explain. A near-death experience that changed everything I thought I knew about fasting, prayer, and even the spiritual realm. What I saw, what I felt, it was so intense I've never been the same since. But before we dive into my experience, let me know where you're watching from. It'll be awesome to feel connected, even if we're miles apart. And don't forget to like and comment. Let me know your thoughts on my story. Let's have a real discussion about this and learn from each other. Now, you might be asking, what does fasting have to do with a near-death experience? Trust me, I had no idea either. But that day, everything changed. It was September 12th, 2023. I was on my 7th day of a water-only fast, a fast I felt led to do by something greater than myself. Fasting was nothing new to me, but this one felt different. There was a strange weight, a feeling of being drawn into something beyond the physical world, like something supernatural was happening. And that morning, it all came to a head. I remember driving to my church's early morning prayer meeting at 5:30 a.m. The streets were empty and the rain was falling gently, something that doesn't happen often in Sacramento in September. As I listened to worship music and prayed, I felt this overwhelming closeness to God. But this peace didn't last. In just a few moments, everything changed. What I experienced next is something I never expected, and I can't explain it fully. Yet. I had just turned onto Madison Avenue when everything changed. Out of nowhere, a drunk driver in a pickup truck ran a red light at full speed, crashing straight into my car on the driver's side. The impact was brutal. The medical reports later confirmed that the crash caused severe internal bleeding, multiple organ failures, and the scariest part, my heart stopped for 17 minutes and 23 seconds. But those 17 minutes, they weren't just a blank void. What happened during that time was more real than anything I've ever experienced in my entire 16 years of life. One moment, I was trapped in my car, and the next, I felt like I was floating above it. I could see everything happening below me with perfect clarity. Paramedics frantically trying to save me, police officers rerouting traffic, even the driver who hit me, sitting on the curb with his head in his hands. But then, something impossible happened. The scene around me started to fade, and before I knew it, I was being drawn upward, pulled into what I can only describe as a tunnel of pure, living light. The feeling was beyond words. There was no fear, no pain, just an overwhelming peace and love that filled every part of me. But here's the thing. As I moved through this tunnel, I realized something that completely flipped my understanding of what it means to be alive. I wasn't in my body anymore. Yet, I felt more alive than I ever had before. And where I ended up next? It was unlike anything I could have imagined. I emerged into what I can only describe as the outer courts of heaven. The beauty I saw there was beyond anything Earth could ever offer. Colors that didn't exist here, music that seemed to come from every direction and none at all, and a light that was so bright it didn't hurt to look at. But what truly captured my attention wasn't just the beauty, it was what was happening between heaven and earth. From where I stood, I could see these golden threads of light stretching from earth all the way up into heaven. These weren't just random lights, they were pathways created by people fasting and praying. It was like seeing a spiritual map of the world, with these incredible connections linking our world to the next. Then I heard it. His voice. Jesus. Even though I hadn't seen him yet, I knew instantly it was him. His voice resonated through every fiber of my being. Jacob, I have brought you here to show you what your eyes have not seen and your ears have not heard. And just like that, he appeared before me. His presence was something I can't even explain. Pure love, power, and authority radiated from him. His eyes held a depth of understanding that made me feel both completely known and loved beyond words. Watch, he said. And what he showed me next was something that would forever change how I viewed fasting. What Jesus revealed to me about fasting was unlike anything I could have imagined. And it all started with how fasting impacts the spiritual atmosphere. What if I told you that fasting wasn't just about giving something up? It was a direct line to heaven, where your prayers and actions could change the course of history itself. But the most mind-blowing part? It wasn't just me fasting for myself. I was shown how fasting impacted entire generations, even shaping the world long before my time. Jesus then took me to what he called the halls of time, where I saw countless believers throughout history who had undertaken serious fasts. I saw Moses during his 40-day fast on Mount Sinai, receiving the 10 Commandments. But this time, I could see beyond the physical. I saw the spiritual dynamics of what was happening. His fast had literally created a space in the spiritual realm where God's glory could descend, allowing him to receive the law directly from God. And this was just the beginning. I saw Daniel fasting, pushing back dark spiritual forces from entire regions. But here's the thing. It wasn't just the well-known figures. I saw countless unknown believers whose fasting had shifted spiritual atmospheres in ways they never knew about during their lifetimes. Jesus spoke then. "Jacob," he said, "I am showing you these things because my church is entering a season where understanding the power of fasting will be crucial. The battles ahead cannot be won through regular prayer alone. Fasting must be restored to its proper place." But just as I began to grasp the significance of fasting, Jesus revealed something that truly shook me to my core. I saw how corporate fasting, when groups of believers fast together, creates spiritual storms of power. These combined fasts generated a kind of momentum, shifting entire atmospheres over cities and nations. Jesus showed me how, in the coming years, corporate fasting would be key to breakthroughs in many situations. But not all fasting carries the same weight, Jesus explained. And this is where things took a turn. He showed me different types of fasting and their effects. I saw how fasting done for show or religious obligation had nearly no impact in the spiritual realm. But fasting done with genuine humility, repentance, and a pure heart created powerful spiritual shifts. And then came a revelation that completely changed my view of fasting. Jesus revealed how fasting actually affects our spiritual DNA. It's like when we fast, our spiritual senses go through an upgrade. Extended fasts actually create new spiritual pathways in people, allowing them to operate in greater discernment and spiritual authority long after the fast ends. But here's the part that really blew me away. Fasting isn't about convincing God to do something for you. It's about positioning yourself to partner with what God is already doing. When you fast, Jesus explained, you tune your spiritual frequency to heaven's frequency. But fasting doesn't just affect your personal life, it has profound effects on spiritual warfare. I saw believers fasting, appearing clothed in additional spiritual armor. Their prayers were like precise weapons, hitting their targets with accuracy and power. But there was a warning. The enemy targets those who fast because he knows its power. Jesus emphasized, protection during fasting is crucial. Stay under the cover of my blood and my word. Don't fast in your own strength or understanding. What's more, Jesus revealed how fasting increases a believer's spiritual authority. Each day of sincere fasting elevates a believer's authority in prayer and spiritual warfare. It's like receiving promotions in heaven's army. Remember, he said, this authority isn't earned, it's granted. But there was one final thing Jesus showed me that changed everything. I saw how fasting creates what appeared to be spiritual reservoirs, storehouses of provision that believers can draw from in times of need. People who developed a lifestyle of regular fasting built up reserves that strengthened them during trials. But there's more. Jesus revealed how fasting also enhances worship. When we fast and worship together, it creates a unique harmony with heaven's worship. Fasting, combined with worship, makes our praise especially pleasing to God. And then came the sobering part of this revelation. I saw how the church is entering a season where understanding the power of fasting will be crucial. Jesus showed me the challenges ahead, trials that would require God's people to operate in levels of spiritual authority only accessible through fasting. The times ahead will require my people to be spiritually prepared, he said. Fasting is not optional for the battles to come. But fasting isn't just about winning battles. It breaks spiritual chains. Jesus showed me how fasting, done in faith and with pure motives, breaks chains of addiction, oppression, and spiritual bondage. Jesus also revealed how our fasting partnered with his intercession, bringing him joy. When we fast with pure hearts, it moves God's heart, not because we're trying to earn his love, but because we're partnering with his divine purposes. As my time in heaven drew to a close, Jesus gave me one last crucial understanding about fasting. He showed me how fasting affects our spiritual inheritance. It clears away the debris that blocks access to spiritual blessings, restoring wells of inheritance that had been stagnant for generations. I saw how fasting creates spiritual bridges, connections between different parts of God's work, and purposes that carry his power long after the fast ends. And one of the most extraordinary things Jesus showed me? How fasting can lead to spiritual multiplication. When done with pure hearts, fasting multiplies its impact in ways we may never fully understand. Jesus explained, the impact of fasting often goes beyond what you can see. Sometimes the greatest fruit of your fasting will only be revealed in eternity. But perhaps the most important lesson he gave me was about spiritual timing. Fasting, Jesus said, doesn't always bring immediate results. Sometimes it's preparing us for what's coming. So, as we enter these challenging times ahead, God is calling his people to fast, not just in response to crisis, but in preparation for what he knows is coming. And that's when I was reminded of the most important truth of all. Fasting, Jesus told me, isn't about the fast itself. It's about partnering with him in his purposes. The power is not in the fasting itself, it's in me, he said. And with that, I was returned to my body, alive and healed in a way that no one could explain. It was a miracle, yes, but it was only the beginning of what God had planned. 3 months later, during a time of extended fasting, I would be brought back to that same realm of living light for an even deeper revelation of fasting's power. Watch, Jesus said, and suddenly I saw lives transforming before my eyes. Addictions were breaking, healing was manifesting, and relationships were being restored. What made this moment so powerful was witnessing how these transformations weren't happening by chance, but were directly tied to the combined power of prayer and fasting. I saw intimate moments between people and Jesus during their fasts. Each sacrifice of food had created a sacred space for deep communion with him. "Do you see?" Jesus asked. "What I showed you wasn't just for you. It was for my beloved church, my precious bride. Every truth you've shared has planted seeds that are now bearing fruit." As he spoke, he showed me something that brought me to tears. Every time someone applied these truths about fasting in their life, it created a ripple effect in the spiritual realm. These ripples not only transformed their lives but also impacted generations to come. These ripples created waves of revival, preparing the way for something greater. Jesus continued, "The days ahead will require my people to walk in levels of spiritual authority they've never known before. What I showed you about fasting isn't optional, it's essential preparation for what's coming." The corporate understanding of fasting, Jesus revealed, was creating a new spiritual dynamic in his church. As more believers embraced and practiced biblical fasting, their combined spiritual authority pushed back darkness in unprecedented ways. "Tell them again," he instructed, "but this time, tell them with the authority of one who has seen the fruit. Tell them that I'm calling my church back to biblical fasting, not as a religious duty but as preparation for the greatest outpouring of my spirit they've ever seen." I saw how each person who embraced these truths about fasting became like a spiritual lighthouse, their light pushing back darkness in their families, communities, and nations. Yet, Jesus emphasized that the power wasn't in the fasting itself, it was in his faithfulness to honor the humble sacrifice of his children. "Remember," he said, as my time in that sacred space began to draw to a close, "I didn't show you these things just so you could understand. I showed you so you could help my people understand. The hour is later than they know, and my church must be prepared." Before everything faded, Jesus gave me one final message. "Tell them I'm not calling them to fasting to earn my love. They already have that completely. I'm calling them to fasting because I want to entrust them with my power. The darkness is increasing, but through prayer and fasting, my light in them will shine brighter still." When I returned to my body, I understood with absolute clarity why God had allowed me to see these things. Everything Jesus had shown me about fasting wasn't just confirmed in Scripture. It had been proven in the lives of countless believers who began applying these truths. This second experience left me with an unshakable conviction. The spiritual realm is far more real than anything we can see with our physical eyes. Jesus is calling us to step into this deeper truth, not out of obligation but as an opportunity for profound partnership with heaven.